All right, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at Vikings Territory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. And today we've got it's a bit of a special event. We're starting off with our new platform here. It's called Shindig. And basically there are new partners in crime over at Vikings Territory. So we've got a bunch of new fun features that you're going to have to bear with us a little bit as if you were here for the pregame show. We obviously are still trying to work out the kinks of getting video and the multimedia and all that kind of stuff up, but it'll be a bunch of fun once we do figure it out here. So today, our plan of action is to talk about the quarterbacks a little bit here. Obviously, the Teddy Bridgewater thing. Obviously, this news hasn't broken yet, but it's still worth talking about because it has become such a big influence on Vikings Twitter for sure. Secondly, we'll do some film breakdown. That assumes, of course, that our widgets, our video widgets here are going to work out. I've got 4 plays downloaded and ready to roll here, so we'll discuss those for the other half of the show here. But the primary emphasis today is the quarterbacks, how this Teddy Bridgewater stuff, how it's going to impact the Vikings if still this is true. And it, I've heard from my sources as well that this is actually something true and not just a bunch of hot air. So, Drew, why don't you start us off here with just your immediate reaction to hearing that Teddy Bridgewater is potentially coming off of the PUP list and will be activated for practice?
Yeah, well, my first reaction was that, this is really, really awesome news for Teddy Bridgewater. Nobody expected him to be this healthy, this fast. I was expecting him to miss basically this whole season. And clearly it's going to make the whole, contract toll issue that much more interesting because if you can look at Arif's article from Zone Coverage today, he brought up the point that the Vikings can't actually toll his contract if he's physically able to perform or physically able to play. So this, makes it a lot tougher for that to happen. And the Vikings, obviously, on their side of it, would love to toll him. It makes it all, it's a bit murky in that way. But as far as Teddy Bridgewater's health is concerned, this is obviously very good for the rest of his career. This is very good news. That's basically my main takeaway here because we already knew that Sam Bradford was the quarterback moving forward here. It's just about Teddy Bridgewater's health for beyond 2017, I think, and that's what this means here. He's recovered a lot faster than I respected. I'm sure it's the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with Teddy Bridgewater is I'm thrilled with the idea of him potentially being healthy. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that, 356 days after suffering an injury that a lot of people thought not only threatened his career, but also threatened his life. And he's potentially going to come back and be able to take hits and, play actual contact practice, which honestly for a quarterback, it's not really a real thing. Obviously they have the red jerseys on, so right. You probably should not be expecting Teddy Bridgewater to take any licks during practice here. But just that sheer fact has me very excited. I'm not excited for all of the overreactions and the immediate Teddy chants that will obviously ensue the second Sam Bradford checks down on 3rd down and 12 yards or something like that. That's going to really bug me. But at the same time, I'm completely down for a real quarterback battle. If we're going to get that, I want that to happen so bad. I think it'd be super fun to open up the competition and be like, look, all right, Sam, Teddy, 2 of you guys, it's going to be one of you guys, and the other one of you is either going to leave via free agency this offseason or is going to get traded or whatever it is. Battle it out. Let's see what you got. Who's the better quarterback for Pat Shurmur's offense here? I want to see that more than pretty much anything else. I think that would be the most fun way to start training camp next year in Egan. Just an absolute blast. And I really think that both quarterbacks have the opportunity to win that job. I don't think that there's a clear-cut favorite, especially when we don't know what's going to happen with Teddy Bridgewater just yet. Obviously, if he's healthy, that's great news, but we still got to see what type of player he is, how he is able to handle getting hit again, and if that knee is going to hold up on him.
That's an important thing to remember here because being medically cleared to practice is extremely different from putting on the pads and playing in a game. That's 2 different things that I think we need to, remind ourselves that there's still a lot of work to be done before Teddy is putting on a uniform and playing in a game. So I mean, I wouldn't expect him to play in preseason, the remainder of these preseason games. But being medically cleared to practice and participate with, in the offense with Pat Shurmur's offense instead of just looking at it in the quarterback room, that will be a tremendous step forward. And I mean, the bottom line here is this is still Sam Bradford's team, unless something either he suffers an injury or unless he turns into Blake Bortles. He will be the starting quarterback for the Vikings for the 2017 season.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with you there. I did forget to open the show with our sponsor notes, so I'm going to quick cut out of this conversation here and let you guys think about the things that we just talked about here. And honestly, you can ask us questions. You can see the little thing where you can raise your hand here. It's a hilarious function. You can ask us questions or comment your thoughts or do whatever it is that you want to do. That's part of the fun of being able to use Shindig here. So let's talk about our other sponsors here, Black Stack Brewing. As always here, it is the brand new brewery smack dab in the middle of Minneapolis and St. Paul with a wide range of clean and flavorful brews and a massive bright tap room, perfect for intimate settings all the way to special events. That's Black Stack Brewing 75 North Pryor, just north of Menards off of University Avenue. And of course, shout out to our sponsors over at Twin Cities Directory, the best way to explore delicious bites and fun-filled nights that Minneapolis and St. Paul have to offer. Check that out at www.twincities.directory. That's www.twincities.directory, helping you discover the real Twin Cities. All right, so let's get back into this quarterback discussion, Drew. I think you brought up the most valid point here and something that more people need to understand. It's Sam Bradford's quarterback of this team until proven otherwise, essentially. He's going to open the season as the starter, no matter how healthy Teddy Bridgewater is. It does not matter at this point. He is QB1. He's gone through camp. He's gone through OTAs. He's got chemistry with 14, 13, everyone from, Stephon Diggs down to Stacey Coley on the wide receiver depth chart. He is the guy we want to – if you want to win football games, he's the most prepared and ready to give you wins, which is ultimately what this is about, right? He's the guy that's going to do it week one. Now, if he struggles and we start seeing St. Louis Rams era Sam Bradford where he's throwing picks to Everson Griffin – that type of thing, you'll start getting an influence from fans immediately. I guarantee that. But you'll probably start seeing the wheels churn in Mike Zimmer, Pat Shurmur's mind as well, knowing that they're going to have to pay someone. And it's probably it's going to be the better quarterback of the two. I think that you have to favor Teddy Bridgewater in terms of the future, simply because he is the face of this franchise. We know that the coaching staff loves him. But if he comes out, so basically, if Sam comes out and we're in like week 5 and he's been awful, you'll probably see a transition. I mean, it's going to be a huge factor here, and that's part of the reason why people hate the fact that Teddy Bridgewater is coming back, is because it creates an inherent quarterback controversy, regardless of how healthy he is. It's not Teddy Bridgewater's fault. Like, I don't know why people act like he should just not do his job. Right. That's ridiculous. But the fact of the matter is, he's so beloved in Vikings territory that it's going to create the controversy's been going on the entire time. People have been arguing who the better quarterback was when Teddy Bridgewater was on one leg. I mean, this doesn't. We
finally get to the point now where this is actually a relevant conversation. The past
but in
8 months or whatever, it hasn't been relevant.
But in terms of simply how the fans view this, how much is this really changing? I mean, everyone's been fighting Teddy Bridgewater's battles for him for almost a year, and that was with absolutely no proof or no evidence that he'd ever come back. So basically, the only change here is now Teddy Bridgewater fan club has something to get behind with their argument, saying our guy is healthy, he can be the starting quarterback here, and that's fine. I'm pumped about that idea. But at the same time, Sam Bradford's the quarterback.
He's a quarterback.
He deserves some respect, honestly. He deserves some respect. It's getting ridiculous.
Right. I mean,
he's a good quarterback too. He's not a bad quarterback.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part because what has Sam Bradford done to lose the job, and what has he done to be in the situation where if Teddy Bridgewater is actually deemed healthy enough to play in a game, it's going to be, one check down on 3rd and 11. That nets 5 yards, and then we're going to hear the Teddy chants in the stands. It's a tough situation for Bradford. Obviously, if you want to rebuttal that, you'd say, well, the guy's getting paid all this money, and I get that, but he he's not getting a fair shake, as our guy Don from Ohio would like to say on Twitter. I think he said that to like 7 different people yesterday. But it's true though. Sam Bradford is. Last year I thought he was an above average quarterback, considering the line, considering the 3 different offensive coordinators he had last season. What worse of a situation can you possibly imagine for a quarterback? And he still steps in.
And he's done this before. He did this in Philadelphia. And, I mean, he didn't really do it with St. Louis, but there was always a controversy there because he was always hurt. I mean, people talk about his mental fortitude and his toughness, his ability to handle this inherent pressure of being potentially Teddy Bridgewater's successor, if at the very least Teddy Bridgewater's placeholder. The fact that he hasn't lashed out, I mean, good for him. Seriously. If you're in Sam Bradford's position and you've heard all the things that people say about him, all the things that people say about Teddy Bridgewater, and all the things that they devalue about his game, the fact that he takes criticism for breaking the completion record, like, how do you not freak out? I mean, I commend his mental fortitude for that alone. So I think he's perfectly equipped for this battle. Am I confident that he's going to hang on to the job? I would say maybe not, simply because Teddy Bridgewater is going to get a shot at some point. It's going to happen. I think it's inevitable. I really do. I think fan poll here is too important, because think about this from a business perspective. Who's the guy that's putting people in the seats? Who's selling the tickets here? If you decide to trade one of these 2 quarterbacks, and let's say they're of equal value, who do you trade? The guy that sells all the tickets, or the guy that's probably healthier long-term? You can kind of assume more about his health, which, by the way, 2 torn ACLs for Sam Bradford, it's not all that much different. He's still made out of glass. He's just – I think it's kind of lucky to have escaped last season with the offensive line.
We got our guy Joven. Is that how you say his name?
Joven, something like that.
He sent us a question here. We can look – Shindig's pretty cool. We can just look at the question right here. He says he's got a hot take for us regarding Sam Bradford as a QB and this offense. I would like to hear that. So I think, is it up on screen now? I think it's up on screen now.
Here, I just hit the spotlight button on his thing, so it should be coming up here.
I think. Okay, we have to make sure he's got. If he's going to come on, he's got to have camera and audio working. So if Joven, if you need to get that set up, please do, and then we'll take your hot take live on the show here. So
here we go. I think he's coming up now. And come on. It's at 0. It says
drum roll.
In the meantime here, I mean, I can continue. I can fill space. I can fill time with more Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford discussion. I want to point out that there's got to be more balance just in our fan base, like in terms of the way we think, right? Like, it needs to stop being a roller coaster every time something happens. And as entertaining as that is, I was literally just reading my Twitter yesterday morning, and it was like watching TV, just fire content all the way through. But at the same time, like, it's so irrational. I look at it and I'm like, guys, he's 360 days removed from having one leg. How can you possibly suggest that he's going to come in here and steal this job? Why? I don't understand that. If someone wants to raise their hand here and explain the process on how that thinking works for me from an objective standpoint, I'd love to hear it, because I don't get it. I mean, I understand the passion behind being a fan, but he's your quarterback. Your goal should always be to your team winning the most games, no matter who it is. And Sam Bradford is your quarterback, whether you like it or not right now, and he gives the Vikings the best opportunity to win football games right now, and that's the most important thing. I think it should be the most important thing for any fan, and that's certainly the most important thing for me.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's Sam Bradford, I think he's never going to get the support that he probably deserves, and it's always going to be that he's always going to have that monkey on his back. Even if unless he literally wins a Super Bowl as a Viking quarterback, there's always going to be kind of that, well, Teddy Bridgewater could have done this, or Teddy Bridgewater would have done that, or it's just the way it is. But people are leaping to conclusions, saying he's going to start the season, which is still a long shot, because in that, simply by saying that, you are saying Sam Bradford will be injured at some point. I don't know. It's a fascinating story, and it's always funny to see how the Vikings can put themselves in these just super weird situations every single year, whether it be, you talk about last year going 5-0 and then ending the season 8-8. Your head coach loses his eyesight. You have the airplane crash in Green Bay. So many different things that happen that the Vikings put themselves in the news in weird ways possible. And here's another one. You have like the most dramatic QB controversy maybe ever, of just the way, all the different intricacies of it. It's absurd because you have a guy like Teddy who his contract could be told theoretically for like the cheapest starting quarterback salary in the league by a long way, or you could have Sam Bradford who would be seen as completely overpaid if he does get extended. And there's very loyal fans to both of them, and it's fun because I find it very entertaining the way each side presents their argument, and it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over how they present it. But it's fun because that's what it is. That's what it's like supporting the Vikings. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah, but we all knew that. Speaking of roller coasters, my personal roller coaster, Taylor Heineke got hurt, and the Vikings signed Mitch Leidner, the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers quarterback from the last couple of years here. Todd McShay's first-round pick is now on the Vikings, and I think it's a laugher. I really do. I'm sorry. I think Mitch is probably a great dude, and I really want to hear your take on this, Drew, because I feel like I've crossed over into irrational when it comes to this discussion. I think he has no chance. He wasn't a good quarterback at the U of M. He's a fullback. He can run the ball well, and he's got a big body, and he's an athletic player. That's a fullback. Randall Cobb can throw the ball better than Mitch Leidner can downfield. Antoine Randall, I'd rather have him at quarterback. There's just I can't believe it. I get this, the point of it, and that there's a space for him with Heineke on the shelf here. But what's he gonna do? He's gonna play probably the second half of week 4, so the Vikings aren't getting their other quarterbacks hurt. It sounds like it's probably Case Keenum's job to lose at this point, with Heineke heading towards IR, depending on the extent of this injury. And that means that you need someone to cover up those final 2 quarters of week 4 of the preseason. Right. And that's probably Mitch Leidner's job. But, bring in someone with potential. He can't throw the ball. It's straight ducks. I really don't think I'm being unfair here. I think that what it shows on film is that he is a very good athlete that tries to play quarterback, but has not successfully done it to date. And there's really no reason to suggest that he will at any point.
Right. I wonder how much of the local kid story, the feel good type thing, this is the Vikings are trying to do here. Because clearly, Heineke's hurt himself and cannot play in that final preseason game. So they're bringing Leidner in literally to play that game and play that game only. And that is, I assume that's going to be the end of Mitch Leidner, because we all watched not all of us maybe, but most of us watched the Gophers. We watched Mitch Leidner play quarterback. He's a big, strong dude. He can run. He's mobile. He's, I'm running out of things to have ways to say that he's a right-handed Tim Tebow trying to play quarterback in the NFL. It's one of those things where
he's not blessed though. He's not the chosen one.
Where it could work if you get a very specialized offense for him. And I feel like Pat Shurmur and this West Coast, centric thing is not. You need that pistol, that read option, that stuff from Mitch Leidner, and this isn't it. So you'll get one preseason game out of him. It will probably be ugly, and then he will be cut, and that will probably be the end of Mitch Leidner's days in the NFL.
He's already been cut by one team. He was in Baltimore's OTAs, and they already let him go. I I think he's probably a great dude, and I really hate being so critical of like singular people simply for this reason that it comes off like I'm just being an asshole. He's just not a good quarterback. He's a spectacular athlete, and honestly, he's from Lakeville, which from a state perspective I love because I love that he's native to Minnesota. From a high school perspective, I think that's trash and Lakeville's garbage. But just in general, I mean, he needs to change his position. So many guys do this. Like, they come into the NFL as great athletes. Denard Robinson, for example, he might be the perfect example of like what Mitch Leidner should do. He should become an offensive weapon, whether that's being able to line up in the slot, learning how to run quick routes and stuff like that, being able to learn how to run end arounds, or simply just being a fullback for real, like an athletic fullback that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Marcel Reese, maybe, type of player that you see in Oakland, where he's able to catch the ball out of the backfield and be a threat as a fullback at a position that basically doesn't really exist in the contemporary NFL. But he's not a quarterback. Just cut and dry. And that's where I'm at with Mitch Leidner. I mean, I think, that's just how it is. I don't see any way around it. This isn't like a response to anyone, by the way. I didn't see anyone believing in him. This is merely like, what are the Vikings thinking? At least bring in a different undrafted free agent that has actual potential. I mean, there are Taylor Heineke's out there. I'm not saying that this amount of time is enough for any quarterback to prove their worth to a team for the record.
No. I mean, that's part of it too. Like, if you bring a quarterback in at this stage of preseason, you're not –
He's learning the offense for the entire first week. He has to just literally learn the playbook. Like, he doesn't have a chance. He doesn't have the potential. He doesn't have enough time to learn the playbook. The best thing he can do here for himself is to go out there during the fourth preseason game and put something good on film. Put something that someone thinks they can work with on film. Maybe it's being able to run the read option so well, something like that, and getting a Chip Kelly-esque coach that wants to see what you can do beyond being able to throw the football. Because I believe he can probably throw those slants and those quick outs. Like, no, excuse me, not like, I don't mean outs. I mean like
the fundamental throws that you need for like Division I.
8 to 12 yard throws. I think he can probably handle those. I'm not confident in it by any means, but I think he can definitely handle those types of throws. I think there's, you get, like Drew said, you get a very niche coach. It's possible, but I just don't see how he can be a quarterback at this level without finding like the most innovative offensive coordinator of all time that just decides that your quarterback's never going to throw the ball consistently or effectively, because that's basically what Mitch Leidner is right now.
Yeah, I mean, and if there's anybody out here that thought this may have some sort of implication on the whole Bradford, Teddy, Case Keenum thing, I mean, it has no bearing on them whatsoever. And if you add a guy at this stage in preseason, you either have dire quarterback needs and have suffered, like 2 or 3 injuries, which, I mean, we've had one to a third string guy. So this is literally just for that fourth preseason game. They needed one arm. They did not want to hurt, 3 guys or 2 or 3 guys, I guess, if you count Bridgewater, at the most important position in football. And so they brought in a guy that's from Minnesota, that is probably a close drive, that's convenient. That's probably what happened. So that's all there really is to it.
Fair enough. All right. So from the quarterback discussion, let's try to get some of this film stuff up here.
I'm gonna cut you off because we have a hot take from Joven that we better get up here. He sent it to us. So he's characterizing Sam Bradford very, in a unique way. I'll say it that way. He says Sam Bradford in 2016 was not a quarterback. He was the single best running back the Vikings have had since Adrian Peterson's MVP season, because he says the passing game was an extension of the offensive extension as the running game, being that it was so many yards after catch. So that's what his argument here is. He says, I'm going to read off the rest here. We never saw more than glimpses of Sammy Bradford as a QB. We saw him as a replacement of Adrian Peterson, and at 3,800 yards of offense, he more than did twice over. The thing that made him ineffective, red zone struggles, and self-hurting penalties. So do you have any response to that take? Because that's a unique way of looking. I have not heard that before. So I respect that for sure.
It's definitely a unique way of thinking about it for sure. I get it too. I get this is kind of just it's somewhat of an analogy, right? The fact that he's literally just basically saying that the Vikings offense last year was just a running game that once in a very great while would throw the ball downfield. And when it was thrown downfield, it was probably completed because Sam Bradford was very accurate downfield. Yeah. Let's not forget that. But I see his point, and there need to be changes. Obviously, we've been talking about explosive offense for this entire offseason, right? I mean, this has been a big player during training camp. It's been a big headline at Star Tribune, 1500, Pioneer Press, all those different places. And I think we're going to see that. I thought we saw shades of it with the Stephon Diggs catch down the sideline that broke coverage. That's the type of thing that, if it could continue to happen. The offensive line looked a lot better last week. Again, let's make sure we see a trend here before we start going one way or the other, even if it is positive. I think this is an optimistic performance for just about everyone on the offensive line against Seattle. I thought that Mike Remmers came back and looked very solid.
Yeah.
Just overall, I thought that unit was just good. And Easton, by the way, might be stealing the show from Alex Boone pretty soon here.
That's quite.
You don't buy into that one?
That's jumping to a conclusion.
I think I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that take.
If his job as the starting left guard was in any doubt, he would have played, I think. But
it's probably a fair take. Like I've seen that take thrown around here, and I do think that Easton has played very well for what it's worth. I think that he's making that that discussion come up by playing very well. Pat Elflein, by the way, also very strong. I mean, the offensive line as a whole looked pretty sufficient, if not average, even if not potentially a little bit above average against Seattle.
It was one game, but yeah, it's
one game. We want to see that again. Obviously, if you combine two games, you've got a crap performance and an above average performance. If you combine those together and find the mean, it's not good still. So we still need to see quite a bit from the offensive line. But yeah. So
we have one more question from Anthony. He was watching the program here. He brought up a Leidner question asking, do you think Mitch Leidner even has a chance to make the practice squad? I'll publish this for you because I think we can do that. So that's kind of cool. But do you think Leidner even has a chance to make the practice squad? Your take?
No. I think that first of all, I just want to say I don't understand how Wes Lunt wasn't brought back. If you needed a quarterback, just bring back the guy that already knows the playbook. That's right. Baffling. I thought that Lunt had a chance to make the practice squad because he has the physical frame. Mitch Leidner does too, for what it's worth. But Lunt actually proved that he could throw the ball a little bit, and I really just don't see a chance for Leidner. But at the same time, you typically are going to always put a quarterback on your practice squad. And the Vikings quarterback situation right now, the only one that could be is Mitch Leidner and then also Taylor Heineke. And if Taylor Heineke, for example, is going on to IR, again, we don't know the extent of his injury just yet. If he's going on IR, that opens up a spot to put a QB on your practice squad. And by default,
that's a good point.
Mitch Leidner could make the practice squad. That's the only way I see him making the practice squad. True.
But yeah, they'd have to bring someone else in to replace the guy they just brought in to play the preseason game. Man, that would be sad if Mitch Leidner is your practice squad QB. But I guess it might happen. Now, when you phrase it that way, it's scary, but it's also like, well, that's probably true, and that's probably going to happen. So, we have another comment here from Joven in our questions here. He says, do we know how many drives we had in the red zone that would have been TDs had we punched them in into the end zone versus field goals last season? Which he brings up a good point. I don't know
how many drives per se.
It was a lot.
I know that the Vikings were about 32% in the red zone last year, I think.
Which is
so a lot. So not good.
It's poopy. So
yeah. You probably want to. I don't know what I can't off the top of my head. I don't know.
What he's getting at is he's trying to critique Bradford in the red zone, which is fair. Right. I think that's definitely one of the things that is, one of his weaknesses. Along with, you can talk about, the pocket maneuverability. You can talk about his crunch time stuff, which can kind of also work in there with the red zone. But yeah, you gotta be better in the red zone. You have to score 6 instead of 3. And that's been evident in the preseason here too. So we're not immune to critiquing Sam Bradford. We objectively can tell you what he does badly and what he does well. And in the red zone, he's not great. So
hey, there we go. The video's working.
Wow, look at that.
How about that? That's beautiful.
We have film.
Okay, so film is up. This is the first play we're going to talk about here. So moving on from Mitch Leiter, any other questions you guys have? If it's about what we're talking about here on film or whether it's about something else entirely, whatever it is, we'll field those towards the end of the show here. We've got about 25 minutes left here, and I've got 4 plays that I want to get through at least on a basic level, right? So let's start off here with I'll make this big. It should be big now for people viewing it. Let me know if it's bigger and you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about here. This first play, this is the Dalvin Cook run. This is the first long one that he, quote, long one. Obviously not 20 plus, but about 15 yards here. This is the first one that Dalvin Cook was able to break a little bit. I'll run it through a couple times here, and then we'll get into how this play was broken down, what's so great about it, and why I think that this actually has value. So straight up here, you're going to see Dalvin Cook at the line of scrimmage lined up. In a single back, he's going to come off the left side. He's going to go through, make one cut, and bust through, and then he's going to fall forward here. These are all things that I've been talking about recently on the show that I really like about Dalvin Cook. And while this isn't the type of play that has an immediate impact, obviously this is a preseason game, so we don't even care about the scoreboard, but this is a play that basically gets you a first down. It's not a scoring play. It's not a play that's going to show up on a highlight reel. I do think it shows a lot about who Dalvin Cook is as a runner. So let's break this down very slowly here. You got 2 wide receivers to your right, 1 to your left, 2 guys lined up in the slot here, and Sam Bradford's going to drop back in the single back, and he's going to throw this thing into it looks like, I believe it's outside zone. Offensive line is going to flow to the side, and Dalvin Cook is basically going to read the defender that comes up by that C-D gap area. He's going to read his eyes, and he's going to make one cut and go. So let's run through this one more time here. Here we go. There's the one cut right here. Yep. So impressive. And he bursts through the middle. And then this is what I love about Dalvin Cook. Everyone talks about his versatility as a runner, but this right here that I'm about to play here, this is what I love about Dalvin Cook, right? He's got 4 defenders all the way around him. He is stopped. Like, he's stuck by all angles, yeah. And these are good defenders too, good tacklers. We got Richard Sherman there. I believe Cam Chancellor's in there, Bobby Wagner as well. He's going down, but he falls forward. So now from the point where he had guys all the way around him to this point, that's 4 more yards. 4 yards per carry in itself is extremely impressive. It's NFL caliber. He's getting 4 yards per carry after contact. That's extremely impressive, and that's something that translates directly to the regular season.
Right. I mean, that's the thing too. I feel like with these Vikings running backs since Adrian Peterson, we've had like bits and pieces of what made Adrian Peterson such a good runner. We've had guys that fall forward but aren't quick, don't have that acceleration, don't have that burst or the vision. With Asiata, we had a guy that falls forward, and that's about it. With Eric McKinnon, you have a smaller, shifty back, but he's not going to always fall forward for those extra 3 or 4 yards that you talked about. And Cook here, he's obviously got that first of all, that once that hole opens up, I believe it was Rashad Hill and Easton that kind of opened that up for him. That burst through the hole is something that we haven't seen since Peterson, really, in a Vikings uniform. And then he makes a couple guys miss, and instead of a borderline first down carry at the end, he pushes forward for an extra 5 yards. And again, I'm trying to look at who made that initial push: Easton, Rashad Hill, and then I think that was Adam Thielen too, coming in on the He was down there kind of in line almost as a tight end, made a really nice block as well. So
you can see towards the bottom of the screen here, you can see how the wide receivers where their blocks are supposed to line up too. I have it paused in the perfect spot right now where you see the slot receiver and also the outside receiver. They're in charge of getting in front of it. It looks like Richard Sherman, and I'm not positive who the linebacker is there. It might be KJ Wright, but I'm not 100%. Yeah. And basically, I'm
looking at Thielen. Look at Thielen up here too on the top. On the he's looking at I'm trying to see who that actually is who he's blocking, but he makes a really good block here too. If you play it, opens that crease up farther, so it gets
right there.
So Cook has the opportunity to get farther down the field. Yeah.
And you're seeing Mr. Michael Floyd not get to Richard Sherman in time, and that's partially what prevented Dalvin Cook from breaking to the outside, by the way. So for people that were saying that maybe Dalvin Cook could have gotten more yards from this point right here where he was able to stabilize himself, he also is, again, this is the point where if Richard Sherman isn't there because Michael Floyd had been able to get in front of him on his block, Dalvin Cook could potentially spring this thing to the outside, and you could be talking about, whatever it is, about a 50-yard touchdown. That's the type of player that he offers, and that's another important thing about preseason is that we're able to get these blocks set up. These guys are wide receivers who, aren't necessarily blockers by trade, even though Michael Floyd is a very good one. They can start setting up these blocks, build that chemistry, and understand where the play is going, understand how Dalvin Cook's vision works as a runner too, so that you know which guy to get in front of, assuming that you have the option to get to. That type of chemistry is important here, and that's what you're seeing here, and I think that's very important. So and any final thoughts on this play before here we move on to Stephon Diggs' catch after that?
Yeah, let's move on. Let's try out this new thing. I'm really excited about this, by the way. So this is really cool.
I really like it too. I'm pretty excited about it as well. So let's try this next one. It's not the long Stephon Diggs catch. This one is this is a shorter catch, right? So I'll just play it through once. The reason why I chose this one over a different one for the record here is because we can see how Richard Sherman's coverage affects his route in its entirety, because in the preseason, they don't give us the all 22 film. They only give us the broadcast view, which isn't ideal for, pointing out film critiques and that type of stuff. Right. But this route right here, the way it's ran and the camera angle that they offer us here, you can see Stephon Diggs at the top of your screen lined up at the split end position. He's opposed by Richard Sherman at the top, who I believe is running cover too. I'm not 100%. Again, I've quickly put this together before we started going here. And shotgun, obviously, for Bradford. Dalvin Cook's going to split out to the right. And the other receivers here, you're going to see that Stephon Diggs is the first read on this play. That's the first place that Sam Bradford's eyes go to. And there's the read. You see Sam Bradford's eyes laser focus. And now this is what's impressive about Stephon Diggs, right? He's able to get a good release off the line of scrimmage. That's already impressive because Richard Sherman is so impressive at the line of scrimmage. It's what makes him so great as a cornerback. Let me make this big real quick. And now you see the route, and here's the stem, right? This is what I've talked about on previous shows about how important that stem of the route is for guys like Stacey Coley, for example. I think I've talked a lot about him and then also the fundamentals of Adam Thielen as well, talking about how they're able to break their release at the stem of the route here. So now you're seeing in this pause position, you're seeing Stephon Diggs got his feet set here. Richard Sherman is a little bit off balance because he stops his feet so quickly and was able to chop it.
I'm going to put a buzzkill on this, BJ, and I'm pretty sure that's actually Shaq Griffin. But
is it Shaq Griffin?
It's Shaq Griffin, but
whoops, I lost the video here. Is it Shaq Griffin? Well, either way, I mean,
I'm not. It's just saying either way, you're making the right point here. I'm just saying Shaq Griffin is up there. Sherman's at the bottom of the screen against Thielen. But yeah.
Okay. Regardless. So it is Shaq Griffin. Sorry about that. Point still stands here. So Shaq Griffin is off balance instead. And Stephon Diggs is going to make this release, and he's going to create about 2 yards of separation right here. So that's roughly 2 yards, maybe a little bit less. Mm-hmm. He's going to catch the ball, and he's going to quick turn, and he's going to fight forward, and that's going to end up getting him about 4 more yards. So things that I want to talk about here with Stephon Diggs, I'll run through this a couple more times for those of you that are watching this while I talk. Simply the fact that he's able to create separation so easily once he gets to the stem of his route, just how impressive that is alone. Just to get there, get to the spot, have the timing route down, and Sam Bradford's got the chemistry with him where we can hit him in stride and then still have the time to make a football move before the play is over and he gets tackled. So I just find it's so impressive how much of a technician that Stephon Diggs is. He's just always been so talented in this regard. And I don't think it gets – because his explosive plays are the ones that people remember, the reason why people buy his jerseys are the long touchdowns against the Bears, stuff like that. But what's so impressive about his skill set is that he can hit you everywhere from every route because he is such a technician as a route runner.
I think we should look at this play call here because if you look at the bottom half of the screen, you have Dalvin Cook running into the flat, and it looks like both Floyd and Thielen are blocking in what is essentially a screenplay. And it looks like Bradford quickly looks to see the numbers he has, if he has an advantage. And then if he does not have that advantage, which it looks like the linebacker right there, I can't tell who that linebacker is for Seattle, but he runs and quickly makes that play kind of a wash on the right side. So then Bradford quickly goes back to the left, sees the advantage Diggs has on Griffin. And as our buddy Dan points out, Diggs out for Harambe. It's a nice 10-yard catch. So I like that play call, though. I think that should be pointed out. It looks like it was initially a kind of a quick screen setup for Dalvin Cook on the right side. And then Bradford noticed that they did not have that numbers advantage, so they go back to the left, take the 10-yard gain on a simple comeback route. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. And I like that they have Kyle Rudolph going up the seam here. I think that's an important part here because that takes the double coverage away from Stephon Diggs over the middle. So he technically – this could be a choose your own adventure type route at the top at the stem here where Diggs can either choose to turn around or he could cut to the right and make this into basically a 12-yard slant. It could be that type of play because it is a timing route here, and that is something that's featured in Pat Shermer's offense. But I like Kyle Rudolph here because you see the damage that he's able to do here. He puts a man in between the linebacker, so he's not able to get over and cover the flat there. You can kind of see this from the still that I've got up here. And then you can also see that he's also carrying his man, and his man, I believe, had his back turned to the play that Stephon Diggs was running at the exact same time. So that just – if Stephon Diggs is able to break away from Shaq, then all of a sudden you can see him breaking into the open field because simply the decoy that Kyle Rudolph sets up by being a big body tight end. So I think that's a very important thing here. Overall, just tremendous execution here. This is why I see a good overall performance from Sam Bradford. I know they didn't get 6 in the red zone. That's a real problem. That's something that needs to happen. But these type of plays, these timing routes, these translate to the regular season, and I really think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, and it's we should also point out too that those type of plays, like the little 10-yard dump off, is essentially, you want to see the downfield shots, the bombs instead of the check downs, as Bradford's become famous for. But these type of pass plays are what can really help win games. If you can execute these with precision and do it consistently, which I think the Vikings have the quarterback for it. Sam Bradford's excellent in making quick decisions, and B, the receivers for it. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Jarius Wright are guys that are really quick and kind of short timing routes.
Guys.
Those are plays that they're not fancy. They're not going to show up in the highlight reel, but they move the chains, and they're very vital to, especially a Pat Shermer offense.
Absolutely here. Okay, so let's switch over to the defensive side of the football. This play right here is going to be a tackle for loss by Eric Kendricks, right? So this is a type of play where, again, it's probably not going to show up on a highlight film. It might show up as kind of like a transitional one, but it's not one of those big plays that's going to highlight Eric Kendricks' career by any means. So let's run through this real quick. You're going to see him absolutely fly to the ball. He's going to come around the edge off the right side, and it's just extremely impressive how he's able to narrow in on the runner. I believe he's coming through either the B or the C gap here. And he's going to come around here, and he's going to get his arms, and he's basically going to make an arm tackle here in the backfield. That's, textbook Mike linebacker stuff. I know that I talk about how Eric Kendricks is probably more of a will because of his range and just simply the way that he plays linebacker for the Vikings. For the most part, it's going to be in that double A-gap formation where he's flowing sideline to sideline or pressing with a blitz, one of the two. But when you're in a base defense here, just one more real quick here. I believe this is this is a base scheme, right? And you're going to see Eric Kendricks right there lined up at the or the Mike spot there. You can see just by his ability to read the play. So as soon as this ball gets handed off right here, you're seeing Kendricks on the side there on the edge at this point. He's already diagnosed the play as a run. He's essentially sold out for the fact that this is not going to be play action. Because if this is play action, Eric Kendricks' bubble that he's in charge of, he's probably in trouble. But in run defense, this is a great read. He finds his way to the line of scrimmage. He gets himself in a position where he can take a look at the rusher before he actually gets to the place where he's going to make his one cut and go. And there he is. He gets into the backfield, hits him right there at the line. It looks pretty much about at the line of scrimmage there. And there you go. Vikings collapse, and all of a sudden it's a great either no yards gained there, 1 yard gain, one of the two. So great teamwork getting guys in there to pile on as soon as he makes that initial hit. But Kendricks' ability to find the ball and get to the ball is what makes him such a great linebacker for this team. Right.
Well, I mean, I think you look at both linebackers here. Jovan pointed this out to us too. I'll actually post what he said here, but you'll watch Barr come in, and both of them react really well, and then the fullback just has to pick one of Barr or Kendricks to block, and Barr is actually there first. So Barr gets blocked, and Kendricks has the opportunity to make the play. But I also look at Linval Joseph here. Look how many offensive linemen are attached to him by the time the ball carrier has the ball. I mean, if we can get to that point here, but when the ball carrier gets the ball,
how many guys are on Linval Joseph or are attached to him? I mean, you got one guy falling down, you got two more that he's carrying right now with each arm. I mean, that right there is the key here, because now you free up guys like Kendricks and Barr that can get into the backfield. So, I mean, you're seeing the importance of each of these guys that, Barr, the athleticism and the instincts, Kendricks, the instincts, Linval Joseph, the size, the strength, and just the ability to take up people and take up space. It's all right there. And that's a classic example of it. It's not a play, again, that's going to show up on the highlight reel, but you're seeing it all in kind of a microcosm, how important each player is, especially these guys that are getting the money.
Absolutely. And this is the type of play that, if made with consistency, this is the type of money that makes Mike linebackers those big contracts, the Bobby Wagner type deals. It's not always about making the splash play, the pick six against Tennessee that Eric Kendricks had last year. A lot of the time, it's simply just making plays like this, stopping them on 2nd and 5 to create a second intermediate situation instead of a second and short situation. Just kills their playbook a little bit, right? Obviously, the difference between running the ball, having the ball at 3rd and 2 is going to basically be your short playbook, which is, probably about half, maybe a page worth of plays on a given game at the absolute most. If you got the intermediate, if you keep them at the intermediate, they have to open it up a little bit more, and they have to be more specific with what their play calls, because they got to get past the sticks, or they got to get the ball to someone who can get it past the sticks. It just lowers the odds. So these type of plays are very important. I just love what Eric Kendricks brings to this team, man. I think he's such an impressive talent. I think he's both impressive on the field and off the field. And I think that he is Vikings linebacker, basically tattooed on him for his entire career because of this type of play. You would hope so, right? I think that the keeping Anthony Barr here as well is part of that equation, given their very vocal, a pretty obvious friendship that they talk about so often here. But just overall, this is just an excellent play. I think that you do see Xavier Rhodes at the bottom of the screen, who's a prolific tackler for what it's worth. You see him get hit pretty hard here and get a little bit washed out at the bottom of your screen. That's an irrelevant point. Just simply the type of detail that we're trying to provide here is just things like that. This is not a good play for Xavier Rhodes. So if you're PFF and you're grading this, they grade every single play, probably going to give them a negative grade. Right, so that's the type of thing where you see PFF grades go down when a guy gets washed out on a run play, when really he's extremely influential in the run game. But you do see that happen there. You see Terrence Newman also get tied up as well. So just overall, great play for Eric Kendricks, and just another reason why this defense is so special and can potentially be a top 5 unit in this league, potentially even a top 3. So let's get to the final piece of film here. Drew, I picked this one out especially just for you, so you can brag here. This is the Deshaun Bauer sack on Trevone Boykin at the very beginning of the second half here. So let's run through it a couple times and we'll break it down. Deshaun Bauer, by the way, is at the top of your screen. Right now, you can't see him. He's actually blinded by the offensive tackle on the left side. He's going to come around the edge here. He's going to use a little bit of finesse with his hands to bat those hands down and get around. And he's basically just going to continue to fight despite it looks like a very obvious hold here. I think that you can see the jersey grab. He just fights through it and gets a full submission on a guy like Trevone Boykin, who can move his feet and escape pressure fairly easily. So you're seeing a lot of very impressive things here. You're basically seeing Deshaun Bauer again at the top of your screen here. He's going to get stonewalled initially. And he's going to bat those hands down. He's going to come around him. And then as soon
the long arms.
Yep. I think you can see right now where you can see the hold start to happen. There's the hold on the play. I would throw the flag on that for sure.
Yep.
Inside the collar, yep. And then all of a sudden he's going to break off that, and then the collapsing pocket. I believe that's Stephen Weatherly at the bottom there. Also an impressive play for him to get there and create that collapsing pocket. So just overall, one more time here before we get to your thoughts on this, Drew. You're going through this right here. This is the most impressive piece to me here. This is what I saw him struggle with when he was at LSU. Simply, he's breaking off of these plays instead of getting washed out, which we saw both at training camp and at LSU, him getting washed out of this type of play right here. At this point in the film, you can see that he has the potential. This has the potential to go one of two ways. He can either bat those hands down and get around them, and also in the process create that offensive holding that did not actually get called, or he can allow himself to get driven back. But the power, the finesse, and just simply the coaching that I would assume Andre Patterson has given him, the instinct to bat those hands down, that's what turns this into a sack instead of Trevone Boykin potentially going wild a little bit here with those feet.
Well, a couple things here, I think. First of all, we should give credit to the rest, because this really essentially to me is a team sack. I think you have. I think that's Ifedi Odenigbo on the other side, opposite Bauer.
Yeah, that's who it was.
Look at the push he gets too on this side. Watch this. If I can play it. Okay, look at this. I mean, backs is. I don't know who that tackle is. Backs him right up into Boykin's lap, basically giving him nowhere to go and allowing Bauer to get that sack. And then Dayton Jones also in the middle, another excellent push for him as well. So, I mean, Boykin's mobility can be erased when you have a pocket that literally just collapses on him and he has nowhere to go, which is exactly what happened here. And you also don't. I mean, right here, the secondary doesn't need to do a whole lot when you have a lot. You only give Boykin 2 seconds to throw. So yeah, you got to give credit, I think, also to Odenigbo and to Dayton Jones for collapsing the pocket and allowing Bauer to, I guess, get the glory, if you want to say it that way, for registering a sack. But that's I think we need to keep that in mind too. That Odenigbo as a 7th rounder, he's made some noise too. Probably an ideal practice squad candidate, but Tayshawn Bauer, just relentless. And I think this is another example that even when he's held, even when he's stonewalled initially, he finds a way to make an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Very impressive play here. So Hovind G just asked a question here that I think is relevant for just how we're going to close out the show here. This is our plan moving forward, right? Drew and I are working on what we're going to consider basically like a sister show to the About the Labor podcast. It's going to be About the Labor Presents, and we're going to have some cute little title attached to it, and we don't know what that is yet. We're also going to be working with someone else on this as well. I'm going to leave that to a mystery. And basically, it's going to be a pregame show. So we're going to plan on doing this type of thing before Vikings games on Sundays, and then having some sort of midweek film review session that Drew and I are able to, work into our schedule. That's the plan. We don't know which day that's going to be, but the pregame show, that's the real deal here. That's something that's going to happen moving forward. I'll be preparing film clips and stuff like that of both teams, so we're able to not just have the preview, which we'll do on Fridays, but also have a visible preview as well, some hands-on stuff. And so Hovind's question was asking if we could talk about Ben Gideon a little bit here. Right now, I don't have that film anything prepared on Ben Gideon, but I will keep that in mind, and we'll absolutely talk about Ben Gideon on the next live show, which will be next week sometime. He's definitely a guy that needs to get broken down, so we can go back and talk about him a little bit. We'll staple that in as being a big talking point for next week. So on this next show here, we'll be previewing the San Francisco 49ers and the matchups that the Vikings are involved with. That's going to be kind of what we do on Fridays for the Fridays shows for the most part here. That's the plan for us moving forward.
We got one more question from Mr. Hope here. He's asking us what we think about Mr. Mankato here. So I'll just go because my picks from before training camp are like 100% accurate right now. So I picked Stacey Coley as my guy, and then my dark horse was Tayshawn Bauer, and I'm going to stick with that right now. Although I would say Tayshawn Bauer is probably ahead of Coley, but I would say that my picks were phenomenal so far. Anyway, through 2 preseason games, I'm doing pretty well. So I'll say Bauer and Coley are my 2 guys for Mr. Mankato right now.
Yeah, that my guys are not doing very well. Okay, so I'm just going to answer this question the way that the Star Tribune wrote their article last year. They gave 4 guys, 2 offensive guys, 2 defensive guys, and basically from that point they did a voting thing where everyone kind of got an idea of who the consensus Mr. Mankato candidate is. So for me, the top 4 here, starting with Tayshawn Bauer. Drew nailed it. I was wrong. He has been exceptional so far. Obviously, still a lot to prove in this career, but I'm absolutely fine with admitting that I was wrong about him to this point, because I still think that my film review on him stands, and that's really what's important to me, is making sure that we get. Okay. I mean, it is making sure that we get the.
You're right. You're right. I mean,
make sure we get the evidence for why right, as opposed to being right.
I get it.
That's what's important. But so Tayshawn Bauer is number 1 on the defensive side of the ball. I think Jaleel Johnson has escalated his stock up to being the number 2 guy. Mm-hmm. He's been incredible. Other candidates for that defensive side of the ball, Ifedi Odenigbo has been very impressive to me. Eric Wilson, I think, really, really deserves to be right there in that running.
Jaron Curse too.
Jaron, does Curse count though? He's a second-year player.
Oh yeah, you can still get it. I think. Okay.
Well, regardless, so I would say that the 3 defensive guys, I would pick 2 in Jaleel and your guy, Mr. Bauer. But I think Eric Wilson certainly deserves a lot of recognition for what he's done. I think that he's fighting his way onto this 53-man roster. On the offensive side of the football, Stacey Coley's really the only lock in my mind. Dalvin Cook doesn't count because he's a second-round pick. We expected him to do this type of thing. If you want to extend this to Pat Elflein, because he's a third round, I don't think so. No, I would say he's not. But Pat Elflein would be a solid candidate as well. But other than those guys, I mean, it hasn't been like nobody's blown.
I guess Bucky Hodges maybe just because of those catches last week, but I mean,
which were very nice.
You need more than 2 plays. So
yeah. And Hodges was not great at camp either. Like, he's not like he's continuing anything. That was kind of the first flash that we saw from Bucky Hodges. So, tough play. I think that you give it to Bucky Hodges if you have to pick one other offensive player, though. Stacey Cole is the only lock in my mind, though. So, those are your 4 guys for me. Bauer, Johnson, Jaleel, and then, of course, Stacey Coley, and then Bucky Hodges kind of by default. So, those are my 4 training Mr. Mankato guys. And we'll get back into, like I was saying, next show talking about 49ers, and then we'll kind of continue this process moving forward here. We're the initial podcast on Mondays. That's going to be the rapid reaction type thing, probably the most rant-prone episodes, I would say. Then after that, you're going to get the midweek film review on video on this thing on Shindig as well. And then you're also going to get the midweek podcast per standard. That'll just be a normal thing. And then always the midway, that'll be like the analysis episode via audio. And then we'll have the Friday show, as always, previewing the matchup and the guys to watch the internal matchups inside the game that you should be keeping an eye on, and what is at stake for each player going into these games, going into such an important game, week 3, for a lot of these guys on the 90-man roster. And just want to point out one more time, we are live again later on this week for the post-game show. That will be coming to you from Black Stag Brewing. I give the address on the top of every single show here, right off of University on North Pryor Avenue. That's 755. If you're Google Maps guys, make sure to join us there if you want. We'll be doing both a video thing and an audio thing, and should be a lot of fun. So that'll be the immediate post game thoughts and stuff. That'll be a podcast formatted, and then obviously, are we doing a pregame show before the game? We can. I mean, we can. We should,
maybe figure that out.
But obviously that pregame show thing, whether we do it on Sunday or not, that will be a consistent thing during the regular season. We're really excited about it. So thanks for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed the brief film review session. Understand that this is kind of an opening episode. We're still trying to understand.
Let's hope the podcast or audio listeners enjoyed it without seeing the actual film. We'll see. We'll try and. By the way, the video will be available too, I think, on YouTube and Periscope or Twitter or whatever. I think the post will be still there to watch if you are listening and want to see what we were actually talking about. So
I think we did do a pretty good job breaking that down, though, so that like trying to create a visual.
Not to brag, visual, but yeah.
Right? Yeah. All right. Well, thanks as always, guys. As I always close out the show, make sure to check us out on iTunes, Twitter, Stitcher, YouTube now. That'll be a big proponent here. And keep an eye out for that pregame show that we're going to be naming at some point here. If you have a good name for us, by the way, feel free to pitch to Drew or I on Twitter. You know where we're at. Find us at Vikings Territory, at ATL Vikings Pod, myself.
At Vikings ATL Pod. I'm going to correct you.
Vikings ATL Pod. Regardless, I can cut that out in the audio version. You know where to find us. Just hit us up, and we'd love to talk to you guys. So let us know what you thought of the show, and we will talk to you guys later on. Thanks so much for joining us.